has been focused towards that top side. Bin, and I was speaking to Nymaera and a number of the other casters that we were kind of chatting to around the series, and a lot of people are viewing Bin as the best top laner in the LPL right now. Of course, in All Pro, he was up there in the second place as well. It's a close run thing between the first couple of top laners. If you allow him a good matchup, particularly if you hold counterpick for him later into this draft, there could be an option for Bin to expose Breathe in a way that TT couldn't in that first round.
Yeah.
What they are doing for that, though, is BLG want to blind pick a bot lane, which can actually lane and do well into the first pick that you see. You have the self-peel of the Xayah against that vibe.
Yeah, and you actually really like that in terms of trying to get away from the setup, because if RNG lock this in, there's a lot of comboing that can happen if they do catch you out, and that Feather Storm's going to be absolutely huge. But you expect RNG to take one of these kind of standard comps that we've been seeing really rise to prominence when the Annie isn't banned away, at least, and get something that's a late game scaler for Gala. They already have the Annie Vi combo, really looking at what they want to finish out first phase with and what the response from BLG is going to be.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think was quite apparent in that first round series from RNG was that Angel, even on pressure mids, thinking of the Vex game in particular, didn't have the cleanest series. So he will really want to kind of put to bed some of those worries with something like this Annie, which can be one of the very strongest mid laners. Of course, this does flex around. You have Ming on the Rift as well, who has played, of course, a number of different champions. He hasn't picked up the Annie just yet, but when you look towards the top tier LPL supports, they can always have that in the back pocket, especially when it comes into playoffs, practicing up some champions which maybe you hid in the back pocket in regular season. So flex pick there for RNG between mid and support for the Annie. On the other side, the Wukong, fairly standard in terms of kind of the response to the Vi.
And it's something we've just seen constantly in the trade, right? I know we joke about kind of back when Aphelios, Jinx, and Zeri have always been picked, but at this point it's just fine Wukong. That rule of the map ever since we got the changes into the new patches, but I'm really excited to see kind of this honed down focus in our second phase. Some priority picks still available on the top side. I expect BLG to use that fifth pick, that counter pick for Bin. We'll actually see a little bit of focus from them towards Angel and take away his Ahri.
Yeah, so as we said, Ming hasn't played the Annie, but the Zeri Annie lane pairing is pretty fine. You've got the outrange on the Rakan at least, so you can kind of poke in the first few levels, so that's fine as a support option. And when you have the Vi on the other side, now I've been talking an awful lot about Ahri recently and other combos that can go with this mid-jungle 2v2. Banning these away and maybe fourth picking something like Yagao's Talia could be an option here for BLG, and then you can then go towards that fifth pick as counter pick towards top lane. They actually choose to remove the Talia away from Angel because, of course, that is still another good pick with the Vi. You're left with something really like Veigar or something at that point. Both of these teams completely hammering down the mid lane champion
Yeah,
pool.
I mean, they don't want any roaming out of mid lane. You stay where you're due, yeah. All right? You stay in the mid lane. And Yagao's like, oh, but you forgot about this one. And we'll see if a little bit of that early game prowess between the mid jungle and especially the lethality that the Wukong and the LeBlanc can be is exactly what BLG want to go for, and it is. They lock it in.
So RNG, are you going to hold on to that flex pick of the Annie for mid lane or for support? What if you held on to it for? They have some options. Looking at that Xayah Rakan, that lane pairing has been put in there for a little while. Of course, many different things that Ming could pull out there. Against the Wukong LeBlanc. Against the Wukong LeBlanc, I think Annie Vi is actually pretty okay as that. So they have to pick themselves as safe as possible blind pick towards that top side, and they do put the Annie towards mid, so it is going to be Zeri Nautilus. A bit more ability to force out the Xayah ultimate, a bit more ability to catch out someone like LeBlanc when they're dashing around as well. They can't dash away from a depth charge, it will just follow them. But this is what this matchup has come down to. Top lane counter pick between Bin and Breathe, the two top laners that have been switching organizations, trying to one-up each other. And Bin has been the one who's really come ahead of that in the last year. Looking at that Ksante matchup, has his pick of the litter and goes towards that Gwen, which will now be, looking at this, a great answer into the Vi. You just pop W and she struggles to get on top of you. The Annie can also really struggle against that Gwen, and you have a good side lane matchup. I think this R5 BLG top lane counter pick, I think that works well for them.
It really does, and it sets them up because the thing about this matchup and the reason why we put a lot of priority on top side, because if you get a lead up there, you can focus so heavily across the rest of the map, right? That's going to be a lead that can grow in self-sustaining fashion. And the way that this draft is picked out, I do appreciate RNG's approach, right? They do have a lot of stability. They have a lot of pick-out tools. If they catch you, they got you. But BLG themselves, I feel like, have all of the ties between these two teams. And as we hit the rift to kick off round 2 of our LPL spring playoffs, it's RNG versus BLG in a best of 5 on Summoner's Rift.
Away we go, waiting the Gyos from the crowd, see how lively they're feeling today. RNG fans typically come out in force.
It's chaos, and I love it. As you do hear the crowd getting a little bit rambunctious for this matchup, as should be. RNG trying to make the run from 9th seed all the way from the first round, all trying to capture another championship here in the LPL, and BLG trying to make good on past mistakes, getting knocked out last summer in the first round by LNG in a really, really tough back and forth game. As we get into this one, we're seeing where early pressure is going to lie. It looks like we might get topside starts for both junglers.
Checking down on the runes as they pop up on screen as well. Obviously, first strike from both mid laners. They have a couple of different options there, but I think given that basically mid lane matchup is the one thing which outranges you and therefore means that sometimes you can't get your first strike proc off. Of course, you've got to damage someone before they damage you. Most of the time, they're willing to take that trade into each other. And we do have press the attack coming in from Wei as well on this Vi. Very good early power in terms of getting those auto-attack resets with your E. If you go in for that, you can very much burst someone out. Speaking of burst, looking for level 1 trades in bot lane.
It's an early ghost popped by Gala, cleansed by Elk there, so a couple summoner spells gone back and forth. The Ignite also used by Ming. And heavy trading between the 2v2 here. Both ADCs trying to step up and prove themselves with supports trying to get as much engagement as possible on the Rakan versus Nautilus matchup.
I know there are a number of matchups that we're going to dive into across this series. So many great matchups. We've already talked about the top lane matchup, which we're hovering over, but particularly Gala and Elk. Gala's historical performance and his importance to the team in spring, even when they were struggling, versus Elk, who is arguably the hardest carry, AD carry for his team in the league, given the fact that he's been given basically unparalleled responsibility to carry his team. It's like, look, if someone's going to do damage, it's going to be you. If one of them gets ahead and gets to perform that role more clearly, that will, of course, particularly come late game, become several items, be a big factor. Wei, with that in mind, looking to see if there's an angle towards bot.
They know where to focus.
Not crashed the wave. It's bouncing back currently.
They're going to go in. That flash early from Ming. Wei is going to take down the long angle here. There's going to have to be some miracles from BLG if they want to get out, but On has sacrificed his life. First blood to Gala.
It's a clean entry into the game for Wei, Gala, and Ming. Wei doesn't even have to get himself completely involved with the first start of that play. The early Summoner's Blown gives him an option in that. Shun now heading down towards this blue buff, but I think with Summoner's Blown on that bot side and Elk still technically around despite himself being half HP, can't stay around for a blue buff, just ends up tracking out that Wukong. So, first kill over to Gala. On goes down.
Huge. Absolutely huge, and really good start on the bottom side of the map from Wei. The wraparound gang towards bottom side, waiting out a little bit of that aggression, and the preemptive flash from Ming, making sure to get that set up. And that's some of that shot calling you love from RNG so far, as now Ben will actually try to see if he can contest Wei here, but Wei will get a little bit of something here for himself, and RNG really have some strong presence on the map early.
You do. So, you've got your bot lane ahead. Now, typically, when you have winning bot lane and you have a proactive mid-jungle with something like this Vi Annie, which have so much point-and-click CC, RNG should be the team which will be able to catch BLG out of position if they get vision down first. They have good vision on this bot side of the map, so watch in the next couple of minutes as particularly Elk's flashes down, maybe he feels less confident walking into the river and supporting his teammates. Whether RNG can start a play knowing that they have the lead currently in bot lane and the mid-jungle to capitalize on that.
I do like this, though. We're seeing those roams from On and Ming both respectively, but we're also seeing a lot of that vision game played around the bottom side of this map, especially from BLG's point. They just want to make sure they're not getting caught in any of these roams, using some of this bot lane pressure that RNG have gotten to get into mid lane, to get into a lot of these skirmishes. But the question is, how do BLG get themselves out of this hole they've dug in the bottom lane? And it looks like help won't be coming anytime soon.
Not just yet. BLG, good response for them through those early first levels, though. They have actually got some really good bot side vision after RNG made that first foray into that TV2 lane with Wei coming down as well. So as it stands, as observers very helpfully toggled that as well. This vision battle is going to be so key. BLG, not necessarily without their own tools to go aggressive as well. You know, you got a Rakan, you got a Wukong, you got, of course, the LeBlanc hopping over walls. Both of these teams, if they find a gap in that vision, can make something really, really work. It really is just that CV2 being slightly further ahead from RNG and getting to control the lane potentially after that early kill, which might give them the leg up, which determines the next phase of play.
And at this point, I'm wondering, I was going to see if maybe Wei wanted to stick around, go for some early objective control down there with how much strength they have, but it did come through with it back for them. And it does. And actually, we have a little bit of pressure given from Shun trying to clear out some of that vision, trying to put some vision down around that Dragon Pit, because with that lead bot lane, as we had said earlier, it's easier to try to secure those early objectives.
Yeah, because it really has
felt still the case.
Yeah.
He just had to go back for the Caulfield, so, you know, just had to make sure he has a hammer to slay the dragon, or maybe even slay bot lane, BLG.
I thought it was more about like the whole like knight with a lance thing. Sadly, there's no like actual like lance. That would be really cool.
It's a warhammer, I guess. You know,
it's pretty cool. I mean, that would probably do a lot of damage. Probably wouldn't want to get hit around the head, even if you were something as large as that Ksante dragon.
What happens if you hit a monkey man with it, though?
He probably doesn't like you very much. It's not exactly a rubber mallet. That thing's like made of some pretty hefty stuff, as it seems like it. He has himself his own Caulfields, though, so they're both going to be swinging those heavy-duty instruments around. And we are, again, looking towards 3v3 bot, but Yagao is the first to move and does have level 6. Where just goes over the wall. Again, it's always so scary when Yagao just leaves lane on something like this LeBlanc, because being able to hop over the walls not once but twice gives you some extra options. Again, we're just posturing here, seeing who's got the first option to kind of punish one of these positioning mistakes.
I love that both teams are trying to check the mechanics early on, see if your hands are awake here, set up in a 3v3
first game
standoff.
Yeah.
As Shun will stop his back, does get the clone over the wall. A lot of damage done by Wei there, but first move is available for Yagao. He's got positioning to come down here. Looks like the 3v3 won't amount to much. But Yagao,
oh, but Vi's heading up here. He might have first move, but if they collapse on him, obviously that situation changes. Again, you see the back and forth between the two of them. No one is ready to, because you really don't want to be left alone after that point comes through. This is something that actually, I think Scout does this a lot as well when he's on the Annie. He just kind of sits there and just drops his ult on you and just says, look, you're going to be half HP. I really don't care at this point. I don't need this. I have my stun stacked up. Let's just get the damage down and see if we can stop you from, again, getting out of lane like Yagao has been doing in the last minute or two. It has been a real tense standoff. Again, you can see the playmaking tools on both sides and why both teams are a little afraid to overcommit.
Yeah, just a little bit of hesitance, but trying to strike as much as possible, put some damage into the armor on either side. No big commit onto the objective so far. Shun did hover around bottom side for a long while, but will be resetting to clear his top side of the map and wondering where we start getting that proactivity from Shun and Yagao. Even a little bit of maybe love given to Bin, because this top trio is so important, as we had set up earlier, Nymaera.
And, you know, for all we've talked about the top lane, it's not been topside plays just yet. But when everyone moves bot side, it allows what has been, of course, that last pick Gwen matchup into the Ksante to just be alone in lane. And that means you can play it out more effectively. You don't have to worry about the jungler being there nearly as much because they've been on vision on bot side that entire time. That does mean that Bin has managed to get up towards that top side, take a little bit of an early CS lead, and it also gives you a bit of an inroad to go towards Herald. So everyone shifted towards early game very early on. BLG hold off Wei from being able to take that dragon early enough, which means that they can actually use the timing now of Herald spawning to trade at least the objectives, despite them losing around bot side early in that first kill.
I really like this kind of trade-off, especially with the standoff that we've had so far in our first 9 minutes, but it has been constant roaming from Ming and on, and a little bit of feelers from both teams to try to find something early on. But again, I wanted to go back to kind of that point we were talking about coming out of the draft, where the LeBlanc Wukong matchup is very strong in its own right, but I still struggle to see if you're not getting that advantage on LeBlanc where you can really find that in, even if you are Yagao. And I feel like you can have a lot of trouble entering a team like a one that is so stable that RNG drafted for themselves.
Yeah, I think that LeBlanc, with the changes to her wave clear, with her Q being able to reset if you kill a target with either part of it, of course if the second mark of it procs, you get that as well. Shun, again, we actually get the 2v2. Let's see what happens here.
We do. Angel will flash for that Timbers. It should getting so low. That second knockup, though, Yagao's trying to find something, but can't hit the chain. And it's a 2v2 that ends up in ultis burn, flashes burn, but nothing else going down.
So, 2 flashes away from RNG, one away from Shun. Shun initiates into that play with the Cyclone a little far out from Yagao, so LeBlanc can immediately combo in. Does mean that the flash away from Wei sees him to safety. And speaking of that, LeBlanc, that's where those dangerous plays come in, where, you know, you have this question, oh, what happens if Wukong LeBlanc don't get ahead? What happens there? You have to be very careful around those plays to stop that eventual, that conversation ever really continuing.
Indeed. And so far, still very, very soft early game for both teams, as we did have that first kill to RNG bot lane and a good capitalization on pathing from Wei. And so far, so good on the home front. Both teams really waiting for Gala and Elk to get involved later on now. Feels like setting our sights on a later part of the game, as we will see kind of the stalemate right now for both sides.
It is stalemate, but a stalemate with the vision advantage to RNG. We mentioned that around bot side when everyone was moving out of lane. We were posting around the dragon. After that top side fight where Shun is, you know, has his flash blown and has to back off because he loses so much HP. Huge amounts of wards in that top side. RNG still managed to get wards in towards that bot side as well. So BLG need to do their fair bit of diligence in clearing out some vision around the side of the map that they want to play around. Of course, they have that Herald. They have a power play available to them. But because they're on so much vision, they don't feel empowered right now to really make the most of that. The only person who really feels empowered is Bitten, is going, hey guys, can I just keep doing my thing up here? He's still got that CS lead.
Yeah, just, you know, inking it out just a little bit, about 10 CS. Yagao will be spotted on a roam here, pinged out by RNG, but it is interesting when you think about the kind of story to this point for both these teams. And I know we talked a lot about it before going into the draft. Tell me a story time, Mazel. I've missed this. Expectations for both these two teams, especially coming to this one. BLG, you know, this is their second attempt at a would-be super team. I know we talked a lot about Elk, but they had an incredible bot lane last year. Tried to use Uzi, tried to use Doggo. It didn't work out for them. But bringing on Elk, bringing on a lot of these, just small names. Bringing on a lot of these teams set a lot of high expectations for BLG for a second year in a row. And while they have improved, while they have made it to the second round here in these playoffs, it's still a strength of struggle, it feels like, for them, and trying to find a way to make all the pieces work, where RNG have seemingly found a way to slot in those puzzle pieces now in the late season stretch.
Yeah, and thinking about how, you know, these teams have found success in the past. Of course, BLG, they had those high expectations last year, never really met them. RNG on the other side, they've had their battles with that this year in terms of trying to go past the era of Xiaohu. But when Xiaohu was on this roster, one of the big things they succeeded in was with vision control and then power plays off of that. They've managed to get themselves, I like to call this optician gameplay, kind of switching between these wards, thinking, does this lens work better on, yeah, I wish you'd seen that one coming. Maybe you should have gone to his optician a choice. But again, you're just kind of flipping between these lenses, going like, oh, does this one work better? Does this one work better? Clear that one out, use the sweeper, put a control ward down, see if that one works better. But as it stands, RNG are kind of winning out the wrestle for wards as it goes by. Next Dragon is spawning in a minute. Wei is going to get himself back to complete a Sundra, same as Shun as well. So we're getting those first items starting to come in across the board. And we are yet again to see the first big explosive fight. Both of these teams are very aware of what happens if they make the first misstep. They get caught out by a Vial, they get caught out by a Rakan and a Wukong getting on top of a key carry. Things go from bad to worse once you start losing the fight.
Absolutely. So you don't want to start giving away that snowball. And even with that first kill going to Gala, they've gotten a little bit of a CS advantage down there as well. It hasn't really wrought anything else. We have about 20 seconds for another Dragon. And I see RNG positioning a lot of bodies down this way, see if they want to try to contest a little bit of vision there. But Yagao being a menace as ever in the mid lane. We do see a lot of movement from BLG here as well.
So Yagao just trying to get as much poking as he can. That's a flash for flash trade.
Very,
Give it on
very
the
close.
That one
got
hits,
to
you
escape.
actually even blow
One got warm everybody up. All right, shake them out.
We do. So, but things are, if that hook hits, you're probably blowing ult and flash from Elk. Still got the ult, though, from Xayah. What's also got available? Pretty much every ult available in the game. Don't have the quickness just yet. Mimic's just coming back up from Yagao. Everyone got a lot of guns to bring them back.
Ben's here first.
Angel.
Ben has arrived. It's a 4v5. Here comes Breathe. The Dragon has already gone over to Shun. They'll be trading it down 1-for-1. Now they could collapse onto Breathe. Breathe finds himself in a little bit of trouble. It is the Ocean Soul that takes to the Rift, and BLG do nicely to stop the stacking of RNG.
Yeah, that's important, because give up to two Dragons. If then RNG had those 2 early dragons and can get towards the next dragon first, then BLG think, well, don't really want to give him soul point for free. Elk still does have that ult. Remember, they couldn't blow that earlier, but he doesn't have flash. Trying to clear out that wave.
You got to. Elk is in trouble. The cease and desist, the lockdown, couldn't even use the ulti. Wei gets the kill.
How many times have we seen Wei do this on the Vi? He's been doing this ever since Vi came into meta last year. Even when his other champions fell by the wayside, the Vi was always consistent. Big kill on that bot side. It's going to allow Gala to get what you'd imagine to be the first tower of the game down in that bot side, gets himself another assist. And Elk, the late game insurance for BLG, the late game absolute cornerstone of this roster, goes down for his first death in the series and at the playoffs.
Yeah, he's getting shut down a little bit in that bottom lane. Perfect execution of their strategy right now for RNG at least. And I always imagine Wei as the sword of RNG, while Cease and Desist makes that sword lock on. And they found the targets in the top side. BLG wanted to contest, but they don't contest anything. They do get 1 kill back. They lost that Rift Herald. They do get a nice triple chain of a CC onto Angel, and that'll be 2 kills to bin. Exactly what you need as a breath of life for BLG.
Yeah, and that changes the equation. RNG, they've been winning out on these kind of tense standoffs around objectives,
Don't
around
let him
vision.
get it. Okay. It's gone.
But the Herald Eye does not get claimed in this place. You're not going to be able to get that second Herald. You do get the gold for killing it. You do get like 300 gold or so for killing that objective. The second one of the games, one of the buffs they had to that one. But in recompense for that, you have given a lot of gold over to Bin. With this last pick Gwen that was counterpicked, and Bin, of course, when he has had individual matchups in the side lane, which he's had advantages in, he has been one of the very best players in the LPL at abusing them. Speaking of abusing AD carries on the turret, that's been Wei's calling Cargo on the split as well. Wei on this fight, again, this player has done great things with this champion. Sadly couldn't necessarily get the most out of this fight in terms of kills. Didn't have the ult, of course, just used that in that bot side. And then as soon as Gwen enters the equation, you think, yeah, we kind of forgot about this champion. Not even after 2 to 3 items spike yet, but that's a dangerous fight from him.
I was looking at my Gwen is immune timer watch on my wrist, and as soon as those 2 kills went down, I saw it spike about halfway. And you couldn't see it because you were too far away from Ben. You weren't inside the game. Well, or that. But it is incredible to kind of get that pressure for BLG from the top side. We've all known incredible cases of team fight Gwen moments, right? And Ben is set up for one of those moments, at least with a little bit of strength for BLG from the top side. But you've got to find a way to use that. And Yagao getting caught in the side lane is not the way to use any of that strength for BLG.
See, Wei is actually still off of vision. See if
they don't have vision here. Yagao's so far up.
He doesn't have the flash to immediately kind of combo Q into ult, as Wei did under that bot turret. And finally, he's going to be seen on the way out by that ward down bot.
Yeah, no flash from Angel either.
Yeah, means that kind of guaranteed lockdown a little bit harder. He does have that toughness. We'll see if we're going to see that a little later into that game. Around one of the earlier Dragon fights, he's wondering if he had an angle to have one of his first big team battles of the game. Yet to really impact things. Got to keep that in mind though, later this game goes on. Speaking of later this game goes on, a lot of the time when you reach 2 to 3 items on Gwen, you expect to see something like Void Staff nowadays, something like a Death Cap, or even something like a Shadow Flame for flat penetration, so you are using your ultimate in team fights to just absolutely obliterate the backline. Ben's going for a Nash's Tooth second to just have individual advantage over Breed. This guy will continually go for this 1v1 matchup. Speaking of that, Wei is trying to make that as less individual as possible.
Take advantage of it.
Bring himself down to this lane before Bin hits those key items a little later into the game. But watch out for that because while, of course, around Gwen's release, had a lot more of the Nash's Tooth coming in. Haven't seen that as much in 2023, or at least the back half of 2022 as well. Just important to keep in mind because that might affect sidelines.
Now we are seeing a lot of early presence around this Dragon Pit for RNG, just a way trying to clear out some of the vision if possible. But you wonder if that second Dragon priority is going to skyrocket here for either team, trying to get some more of those scaling since not a lot of kills have gone by. There's not a lot of snowball potential on the map right now. Yagao's trying to get a side lane turret, but you see where the priority lies about 20 seconds out.
We do, because again, as we said, RNG, if they got 2 early dragons, then suddenly the 10 standoffs become just BLG having to go, well, we have to enter River against Vision, see how this works. And that's why BLG trying to force the meta a little bit more now, partly because Ben is here. And again, Ben does have a lot of that gold. On the other side is Gala. It is Ben and Gala who are really at the right spice right now. And yeah, BLG, they're first into the river. They managed to force their way through RNG Vision. And again, if RNG don't get these early drag stacks, maybe they can't force Ben away from the side lane later into the game. These moments can be very important when you look back at them later.
RNG are just pushing in this mid lane, try to get a little priority there to move their bodies down to this dragon. And it looks like BLG are willing to let that one go this time around. So this will be second dragon stack for RNG and first of our Ocean Souls. As BLG putting a little bit of pressure on this top side of the map, just want to try to get this outer tower up here and claim a little bit of gold back on the map.
But once again, we just don't see a fight. Neither of these teams feels confident enough to go into the enemy team. Maybe when you hit another item on that Gwen, we already talked about that being strong in an individual matchup, but hell yeah, 2-3 items on a Gwen, always strong in all situations. Maybe they can be a flanking threat beyond that point. Pop that W and mean that RNG can't really just collapse on them on the flank as you would do with, say, something like a Ksante on the other side. But as it stands though, BLG, they give up that second dragon, they're not willing to die for the attempt, they don't feel confident about taking the fight in their own way there. And RNG, they now just go back out into the wider map, and this has been a very considered, slow-paced game so far.
And that's what's so interesting to me, especially when we look at BLG, right? This is our first look at BLG in the playoffs in the postseason. The last time we saw them was a 2-1 loss over to their side, to OMG. And it always, for me, is a question of what does Momentum do, what does Time Off do in terms of strategy prep, but also, you know, readiness on the Rift. And I can appreciate that BLG are trying to take this one a lot more reserved, not overstep too many things. They've already given over some kills, they've gotten some back, right? But they're playing with a very reserved style, with a reserved comp where, you know, if they had a little bit of spice, if they were able to get Yagao and Shun ahead, they could snowball. But until then, it's a little bit difficult. Speaking of difficult, Shun found himself between a rock and a hard place, but Angel having to burn that blast, and Angel might just go down here. Gwen becomes immune, and the clocker has hit midnight here now. Gala very low, trying to take down Yagao, but that's 2 more kills for Ben, and he's making his name known against Breathe here and against RNG.
And if the last part of the game didn't make sense to you, why are we playing so slowly? What's happening here? It's because as soon as you make the misstep against everyone running you down, either of these teams can fall apart very, very quickly. And RNG, they make the first big mistake. Despite them winning the Vision game early on, BLG, they wait it out, they find their option. Now they have a 4-kill Gwen, piloted by Bin and that top side. Talked about their importance already. I'm sure we will continue to do so after this point, picking up even more gold from the fight.
It's so big for Bin to have this lead on this Gwen. We're talking about how influential Gwen could be in the late game team fights. Well, it's about mid game, and we saw that influence already with that 2-item spike. We'll take a look back, and it started off with Shun in a little bit of an issue here, but RNG, they decided to turn tail and run, and it ended up in BLG's favor.
And a lot of this is just through Angel being in the wrong place and not having the ability to shut down the threats against him. Typically, Annie wants to be on the front foot, bursting someone down with the ultimate, comboing up with someone else with a big AoE team fight engage, but because of the Wukong clone, couldn't easily disengage Shun, gets burst out, and then has to retreat. When Annie is retreating, she is not nearly the same kind of champion as she is on the offensive. So BLG make use of that missed position, which we've been kind of waiting for the entire game, and now we're starting to see these second items coming through. Third items even being built towards for some of our key carries. Now, RNG, that was a bad fight for them, of course. They didn't really manage to get themselves on the front foot. They didn't manage to buy Gala enough space. Gala, if he does get that space, though, in the next fight, he does have so much more damage to bring to bear than Elk right now. He's at 2.5 items. Elk hasn't even got himself towards the Navori Quick Blades right now, which has defined so many of our AD carries. We could actually be hitting Navori at very similar times. Fro, Gala, and Elk. One of the big things about that item, though, is that if you have Bruno's Hurricane, as Gala has right now, when he gets the 3 items, those Hurricane bolts, when they crit, will also apply that Hurricane, Navori Quick Blades, which means that Gala, for a moment in time, before Elk catches up to that same kind of 3-item spike, although Zara, of course, doesn't really build the Hurricane herself, really, Gala will be at such a bigger point of power. RNG will really want to look to leverage that.
Yeah, they will. And you saw in that gold graph right there that Gala is up in the individual matchup against Elk by almost 2,000 gold. And that is huge, but that also puts a lot of pressure on Gala, where we know he thrives under that kind of pressure. It is about executing that in this game, number one. And coming off the momentum of that first series here in the playoff, they've got to be a little bit careful, being decisive in their shot calling.
Another thing which I just want to highlight very quickly, a little bit of a tangent from this, is that we actually have some XP leads starting to build up across the board as well. You can see that Breathe is 15 to Bin's 15, but only just hit that. Speaking of the,
don't do it.
Oh, he's just going to die.
There's that CC chain. He does go gold, and the rest of the team is here. He might be able to get out, and how many times have we said it? Gwen is immune to you, RNG, as it's a double knockup onto Breathe, and they find another kill. They are picking apart RNG.
RNG just double teleported into disaster. Bin could not be focused down at the start of that fight and gets the healing afterwards. It looked disastrous for BLG at the start of it, but they couldn't take down that Gwen. Could RNG, and it's going to lead to not just more deaths, it's going to lead to a Baron going over. RNG trying to get themselves a consolation prize off this dragon, but Yagao is going to be harassing. He could maybe look for a kill after this point. Bin's walking down as well. Dragon's probably gone, but maybe these members could die.
They're going to try to take down this dragon. This would be third dragon for RNG, so they get a little bit of something back. But the Baron, the big purple worm, goes to BLG. And with that strength, with these multiple fights going under their belt, they are coming back out on the Rift with such strength. And it started with RNG honestly shaking their heads after this play.
Oh, stopwatch, what an item, man. This is just an item which buys so much time. Puts the W up, goes into stasis. Gala and Way have to back off because they can't stand around for the turnaround damage of Bin. And this double teleport is absolutely killer and not in the way that RNG wanted it to be. They teleport into the later stacks of the needlework. Needlework absolutely threads them apart. And that is a bit of an oopsie from RNG from, again, what was a really well-considered, organized early game. As soon as it's come through to the mid-game, when BLG hit their item spikes, RNG have been left floundering.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about BLG, and now that we saw their coaching staff so hyped up in the background there, it is so huge for this roster who had that change up at that last moment, going on that run, but now having the crucial secret weapon, it felt like that was like so talked about in the community. Tabe coming over to BLG here, trying to be
team wanted him.
Those secret moments.
Really did feel like every community, every kind of fan community of the teams was asking for, hey, what's Tabe doing? This guy's got a pretty good track record as a coach. Can we have him? Top esports were thinking about it in terms of their community. BLG ended up getting that coach now breathe on the side lane. That's Nash's Tooth. It's the 1v1 side lane advantage. Nash's Tooth gives you so much damage on these towers, and Bin, with so much golden pocket, can be very, very game-breaking in side lanes at this point. Way is trying to collapse onto the grouped unit in this mid lane. Can he flash onto him?
They do have the double catch out here, and nicely executed onto Elk. As now Shun needs to get out of this one, but I don't think he can. It's just going back in with the Cyclone to go down to RNG and push him mid lane.
Classic RNG, you try and side lane against them, they find a way to catch you out on vision elsewhere. They get themselves 2 important kills, they're going to get themselves a mid out of turret, and BLG aren't able to keep this Gwen in the side lane because they have to respond to the mid lane. A big moment for RNG. They're still against that Baron buff, it's going to time out probably before they can do that much more with it now because they've had to kind of reset where their waves were. And now RNG, hard-earned kind of defense of this Baron.
We'll take a look back as well as a nice wrap around flank from Way. And a unfortunate step up feels like for BLG, as they wanted to try to get an out route, but ended up wrapping right back around to Way's jaws.
It is so difficult playing against Way's Vi. Has felt like ever since he picked up the champion last year, Way has been so proficient at playing around vision, queuing across ward lines, making sure he can hide in that fog of war and get an explosive engage out of it. It's so difficult to predict that to that point. And Elk, someone that we've praised so much, has just not been able to keep himself safe.
Can't do it, even with the Featherstorm, even with the Cleanse, even with the Flash. It's too much CC and chained it too beautifully by RNG. We got to check in at some item completions here. I'm sure we're going to be getting to our third item for Elk, but we do have 3 items completed for Gala, 3.5 rather, and that is where the gold is right now. That is where the carry potential is right now for RNG.
That it is. So, as it has become so many times, it is about Gala and whether he can get significant damage down in these team fights. If he is alive midway through a team fight, you've got to be scared as BLG, but they don't have, of course, lacking tools either. Gala's going.
Gala does hit that lightning crash there. The tower fell, and BLG got exactly what they came for. RNG pop a little bit of aggression, show a little bit of those fangs, but can't pull the trigger.
Yeah, they can't. So they pop that lightning crash, and they go, okay, I'll really dash into the Gwen still, even though they're half HP. That Gwen is such a great champion at dealing with champions diving into them. Pop that W, throw that ult through the rest of the team. The healing comes through quickly after that point. Gala struggling to really make those killer blows, but again, you can see how quickly they do shred through HP bars, even though they can't finish off those kills. Gala is a threat. BLG, they've not seen this game out just yet, despite being in a good position. However, that could change in 40 seconds when this Ocean Soul comes up for RNG. They traded, of course, they managed to get the consolation prize of that Soul Point Dragon when the last Baron went down. If they can capitalize on that right now, BLG might still have some extra questions to be asked of themselves.
BLG are setting up for a little bit of fun in the bush before this Dragon starts. They know exactly how important this is for RNG, but RNG can go ahead and pull that off, right? They are looking at late game. We already said that for both these two teams. And at this point, you have a little bit of security knowing you're on Soul Point, and you can give up one of these Dragons. You can buy a little bit more time for Gala to get that fourth item, that fifth item.
Especially since BLG, they've hit themselves some micro power spikes as well. Make your job easy for you, Mazel. Looking at the next couple of fights, because look at the amount of stopwatches on the top side of the map. You've got a Zhonya's built up. Ben had one of those pretty insane turnarounds a little earlier into the game where RNG could not finish him off through that stasis. Shun also has himself a stopwatch. Yagao as well. Those momentary moments of power can be very, very powerful, even if they're just one-use active items. So RNG didn't have the vision, didn't think they had the power spikes. Wei is in this top side trying to play around vision again. Lucky to not get hit by that chain. Wei trying to play his vision game as well as he has done the rest of this first face-off between these two teams.
Indeed, and still a little bit of moment of pressure here from RNG. I love that Wei is still trying to play up, take as many resources as possible away from Shun, but it comes down to these next catch-outs, right? When we were talking in draft, we said that RNG have a lot of pick-out tools. We've seen them utilize those really well into Elk, and in these downtimes, that's where I want to see that pulled off for RNG.
So, see what they can do with that time allotted to them. 4 minutes until the next Dragon. RNG might hit themselves another key item on someone like Angel or Breathe by that point, which might allow them to play a bit more strongly on the initiation around that front line. Gala has pretty much all the items he needs at this point. As we said, he's reached that combo of the Navori Quick Blades and the Hurricane. That's the third item. The fourth item that came in is, of course, that Bloodthirster. BLG, if they want to try to take down that enemy at AD carry, they will find that harder to get purchased. Elk on the other side has stopped off for a Lodomics regards. He really just doesn't want to be facing anyone but frontline to frontline at this point. Every time Gala or Angel gets within range of him, he has died pretty horribly. And despite having, again, an incredible split, incredibly high damage per minute, incredibly high damage percentage as well for the league, highest in both in those stats, he has been very much focused. He has been the object of RNG's desire. Maybe you could say that Bin has benefited from that because they've not been able to put resources into both sides of the map, but now BLG putting some damage into Baron, forcing RNG to come into their vision, come into them. What can BLG do with this space?
Oh, Breathe will see Yagao on the side. Big engage, and already on is gone. You've got the immune circle from Ben, who's sniffing down the competition as Gala is gunning him out, and that's why you don't give this man Zeri, because he's already found himself a triple. Can they give him a quadra as well as RNG? They put BLG onto the back foot, and that's a Baron for Royal Never Give Up.
No one gets close to touching Gala, who walks away with what could be the game-winning fight. That is going to be Baron into a huge amount of pressure across the map. RNG will be able to take control of their wave. They'll be able to see out the timer for the next Dragon and potentially head towards a Soul at that point. And BLG, they massively fumble this Baron. They're hemmed into the pit. Yagao is not getting onto the backline. Completely neutered by the Nautilus as well, completely neutralized. And Gala, after that point, goes, well, has no cooldown, so Khan's not there, Bin's not hitting him either. Gala just does a little bit of counting of cooldowns and says, you have nothing to deal with me, I'm taking this fight.
Yeah, they forgot about Gala, as some would say. As you can never do that. As we talk so much about experience, we talk so much about expectations coming to this one. Well, the expectation is if Gala gets Zeri and you make it past 30 minutes, he will blow you out of the sky.
He has done that for so much of spring, even when RNG have been struggling. It's one of these reasons why, even though a lot of people didn't have a lot of high hopes for RNG coming into this first round of playoffs, I think rightfully so. This team, you can't really write them out when it comes to the big games. They have big game players that have been on the very biggest stages. BLG now have to see out the rest of this game, try and find themselves back into a semblance of an advantage against the Baron buff, against what could be a disadvantageous Baron setup. They don't really have grievous wounds on their team right now. If an Ocean Rift, or Ocean Soul rather, would to come through from RNG, they want to be winning this next fight. I think after that point, things get much, much harder for them.
It is a difficult situation now for BLG where they still have so much strength in Bin. They're looking at that Rabbit on Spike as the 4th item for him, but
Hey,
Gala is exactly where he needs to be.
Yeah, so Mazel,
It's
you know how it's so hard to kill Gala? Would you like to kill him twice? Guardian Angel's there.
It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be very difficult. I think BLG realized that they are running out of tools to take down this very sturdy composition that RNG drafted. It's something we have talked about coming in the draft, but now they're trying to pick it apart. It's a re-engage. Lightning crashes from Gala. He has so much AoE damage. He's flashing in, and RNG has swept this game 1 by storm as it's one last desperate attempt for Ben and Yagao, but the lockdown is there. Angel CCs them down, and Wei chases Yagao here. There's not anything left for BLG on the map, and TP's coming in, signal the end of game 1 for RNG.
Gala makes himself so tempting. Oh, you can definitely engage onto me here. BLG, they take the bait, but they don't have their Gwen. They don't have Finn. And in the battle of the Fed Gwen versus the Zeri, it's Gala, the AD carry, that comes out on top.
He becomes immune just by being in the presence of the Zeri. He becomes the carry that RNG need in crucial moments. And it is that combo of him and Ming that have stood the test of time for RNG and put themselves one leg up over BLG in this series.
That is a huge game for RNG to take, though, because remember, this is the first game of the series where BLG got themselves that red 5 counter pick, red side draft. It gives you that ability to counter pick one of these solo lanes. We know that Bin loves to play through individual laning side lane matchups, and he had so much gold. It doesn't get much better than this. You have your choice of the matchup, the gold has gone your way as well, and you can't finish off that game. In fact, actually, when it came to the big fights later into the game, Bin could not make it work. He was never threatening Gala. Gala was never under threat of dying in these fights. Now you have to question, BLG, you've tried your topside approach. RNG demolished you while trying that. Maybe it's time to put something back towards that carry and bot lane for Elk. You really didn't get a look in that game.
Yeah, especially after that early blood going over to Gala, it never got easier down there. And I think that's where you look at those tools given over to RNG, and you've got to find a way to pick apart some of those. The thing about game 1s in these best 5s, especially in the LPL, is it builds so much momentum. RNG already coming off momentum off their round 1 win over TT, but specifically in these best ofs, it makes BLG have to return to the table. It gives RNG a lot of strength coming into the draft for game number 2, and that's what I'm looking for them to take advantage of. And for BLG to try to find a little bit of bounce back, maybe use Tabe's infinite wisdom to try to find something in terms of changing that composition and finding that stability around bot side, like you're saying.
Yeah, and on the other side, though, you look at RNG, and things that impressed us were particularly how they played around the vision control and how they ended up stabilizing the game around Gala's item power spikes. You know, they absorbed a lot of mid-game kind of awkward fights. That double teleport into Bin was not it. Don't really want to see that one again. But they took that in their stride and said, you know what? Gala can get items. Gala can do the heavy lifting after that point.
Look at that swing.
And looking at that swing, that is basically just going to the point where Gala just puts his hand up and says, hey guys, I'm ready to fight now. They fight, they win.
I hit items! It's incredible. That's a LPL gold graph if I've ever seen one. A swing of 4,000 gold either side throughout this game. And really a lot going for the win conditions that we had said coming into this one. I think we had a little bit of a quieter game from Shun than I think I would have wanted from a BLG fan perspective, but seeing Ben able to have a lot of strength from the top side on the Gwen, got to find something that maybe bends with the team a little bit more, and especially coming down to the execution of bot lane, right? That 2v2 now, even though we had put so much prowess on top lane, see what happens with these top trios, all eyes are on bot lane after that first game, and who gets to late game, who is the one that is put into a position for carrying, because Gala showed that he has the mechanics and he's warmed up, ready to go.
And let's talk about Ming as well. The amount of times I think about it now, where actually the flash forward in lane, blowing summoners for summoners at points as well, the first play of the game as well, going towards that first blood, stopping the Rakan from engaging. This is not just a one-man army of Gala. He's been given a lot of room to maneuver because of his support's gameplay as well.
And who else could it be but the tried and true carry, the support role for RNG? We're going to step away for a little break. On the other side, we'll see if BLG can find a bounce back.